Good morning. I'm Ken Biberaj, and welcome to Coffee with Ken, a thought leadership series at the nexus of business and politics with a little social impact weaved in. In the news today, Tom Brady has retired again from the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, and the Federal Reserve has raised the interest rate by a quarter point. Today's topic is Eat the Change, and we are joined by the co-founder of Eat the Change, Seth Goldman. Great to see you, sir.
Good to be with you, Ken. And today it's got to be called Tea with Ken.
It's controversial, but I'm going to embrace it. I'm going to go with the half tea, half lemonade.
That's what I'm thinking.
Just to make sure I get enough. You know, this self-promotion, I think your shirt is a spot on marketing as well. So as someone who respects the self-promotion game, I'm going to dive in. So cheers. You've converted us. We're all tea drinkers today. So I want to dive in. I mean, so much to cover with you. I think it's kind of serendipitous. Today's a special anniversary for you, right? So you just created Just Iced Tea, but your effort in tea and beverage started 25 years ago today?
Exactly, yeah. February 2nd, 1998, I turned on a desktop computer in my house, and it was my first full day working full-time as founding Honest Tea. And boy, it was obviously a completely different world, a completely different beverage aisle. And I had at that time no experience in the beverage industry. And today I've got 25 years worth.
Unbelievable. Well, tell us a little bit about that origin, right? Like, what made you start Honest Tea?
Yeah.
How did you think you weren't in food and beverage really at the time, right? I mean, you were.
No, I was working in the investment world. I worked for Calvert Funds, which did socially responsible investing out of Bethesda. And I was, I had an entrepreneurial itch. I was trying to figure out what I could create, but I hadn't found the right idea. And then I went up and gave a presentation in New York to a bunch of institutional investors. And after that, I went for a run in Central Park. And after the run, I was thirsty and I went to a beverage cooler and I said, wait a minute, there are hundreds of options here, but they're all the same calorie profile, mostly the same taste profile, also the same ingredient profile. And I got back in touch with my business school professor, Barry Nailbuff, and said, I think I'm ready to do something about this. And he had just come back from India, where he had been doing a case study of the tea industry. And so he had come up with the name Honest Tea. And that felt like there was enough of an idea there for me to leave my job in investments and, start it up.
And then, so you did that. You got some early on big kind of fans, including the former commander-in-tea himself, Barack Obama.
Well, that's quite a bit later. Yeah, I mean, the initial start was a much grittier. We brewed up 5 thermoses of tea in my kitchen in Bethesda. We got an empty Snapple bottle we pasted a label on and got an appointment with Whole Foods and managed to get our product, sold into their 17 stores here in the Mid-Atlantic. And that was our start off point. And then we, really, it was a pretty grueling 10 years of trying to get make enough tea, raise enough money to keep the lights on. Sure. But we became the best-selling tea in the natural foods industry and then started to scale nationally. Yeah. And among many of the fans, Barack Obama was one.
And then you sold to Coca-Cola. So talking about that, right? Yeah. Like, you were already on a growth trajectory, but obviously when you team up with somebody like Coke, I mean, what was that experience like for you? Could you have envisioned like the kind of rapid growth and what it's like to partner with an entity like that?
Yeah. So in 2008, Coke invested 40% in the business. We were really, we had become the best-selling tea in the natural foods industry, but we wanted to scale beyond natural. And so Coke invested, and we grew from being in 15,000 stores to over 150,000 stores. And the business grew. We were doing over 400 million in retail sales.
Wow.
And so we were scaling. But then, what happened is we had 2 parts of the business. There was Honest Kids, which is an organic juice drink for kids, and Honest Tea. And the juice drink grew faster than the tea. And so eventually, Coke decided they were only going to focus on the juice drink, which is, I'm still proud of the juice drink. It's a great product, but I was sad to see that Coke announced last year they were going to discontinue Honest Tea. So this 25-year, anniversary is kind of a poignant moment because Honest Tea is still on some shelves, but disappearing. But we're really talking about it as a handoff because now that we've launched Just Iced Tea, it's picking up where Honest Tea left off.
So when you think about kind of socially conscious food and initiatives, you don't necessarily think of like the DC area, right? Like you're in Bethesda, I'm in Northern Virginia, right? but you've kind of vocally been passionate, right? Like I think your quote is, "You're disproportionately committed to building your brand here." I
Yeah.
love it, but why? Why this area? Why
Well, this is
California?
I mean, this psychographic demographic is a very conscious one, right? You've got all people who believe in the public sector as a means to affect things. But if you have that mindset, if you care about the environment, if you care about working standards, or you care about the health of our population, it shouldn't only apply to government policy, it should apply to the way you live your life. And so, we are not surprised that the top selling region for Honest Tea is the Mid-Atlantic. And obviously we've invested in this region in terms of our marketing, but
Sure.
when we look at the Whole Foods data, it's really kind of staggering how strong this region is for tea. And I guess maybe we deserve credit going back to what we built, but it is it's still the heart. It is the top selling region when you look at Whole Foods, at least for iced tea. And so it makes sense to invest here because it is, we're fishing where the fish are.
So just iced tea, just iced tea, is kind of taking this handoff. But you had
Yeah.
started to Eat the Change first, right? So talk a little bit about this cadence, right? And what is this handoff? 25 years of experience under your belt now, doing a new rollout of a similar type of concept and brand and beverage product, right? Tell us about Eat the Change and then just iced tea and this kind of handoff that's happening.
Yeah. So in 2019, I wrapped up my time with Honest Tea. I let them know, several months in advance I was going to be transitioning away. I had been working for Honest Tea, and Coca-Cola for basically half time for I guess the more like 3 to 5 years, and then was transitioning out. And I had wanted to start something new. And so, given that Honest Tea was doing what it was supposed to do in the beverage world, I wanted to go beyond beverage. I went into the snacks, and we launched a brand called Eat the Change, which is all about planet-friendly snack food. And we had a line of mushroom jerky and a carrot snack, which are, yeah, thank you. Very good. Exactly. And so and I brought together a lot of the same team that I had around me from Honest Tea, some real just stellar people. And so we were busy minding our own business when I got this unsolicited call from Coca-Cola in May of 22, telling me that, they were going to be discontinuing Honest Tea. And so, the first reaction was just shock, like, oh my gosh, I can't believe that's happening. Then I got some calls from some friends in the industry saying, hey, we'd love to have you help us launch a new iced tea. And then I go, I don't know if I should be helping someone else or launching it myself. And I talked to the team. They're like, we know how to do this. Let's go. And so we, on June 6th of last year, decided we were going to launch a new tea brand. And by September 6th, basically 90 days, we had already sold our first bottle of Just Iced Tea at a store in New York City. So super fast movement. And we were able to do that because we had an incredible team, and also we had the organization set up to do it. So it wasn't, it was a scramble for sure, but it was also, we weren't, figuring it out for the first time.
Sure.
Yeah. And so now Just Iced Tea is nationally distributed in Whole Foods and in Sprouts, and we're talking to several other national chains. We fully expect to take the place. What I say is, a year ago, we weren't in the iced tea business at all. And within 6 months, we expect to be the top selling organic bottled tea in the country.
That's incredible. And it has a nice ring to it, Just Iced Tea. Now,
yes, that's my
co-founder
Barry from Honest Tea came up with that, and it's just perfect.
Yeah, because when you say it fast enough, it says justice, right? I mean,
justice. And that speaks to the labor conditions. Everything we're doing is fair trade. All the ingredients are fair trade certified. The whole approach to the environment, is one that we seek to really treat in a just way. And then the taste, of course, is just the taste of the tea.
Sure.
We say just sweet enough.
Yeah. And then you were telling me before we went live, you just got back from a big trip. I mean, talk a little bit. Are you approaching your own supply chain decisions and sourcing a little differently this time? What's kind of because I'd love to hear, like, with Honest Iced Tea and now, like, what's different with kind of these early years. Obviously, it's going faster now, but
So Honest Tea was really a pioneer in several ways. It was the first organic bottled tea. It was also the first fair trade certified bottled tea. That was back in 2003, and so we knew we wanted Just Iced Tea to be a leader as well. And so, of course, everything is organic and fair trade certified, but we really wanted to gain a deeper understanding of our sourcing. And so we just returned last week. My co-founder Spike and I went to Mozambique, which is the source of several of our tea ingredients, and we were just blown away by the beauty of the garden by the commitment of the community and the impact that we can have. This is one of the poorest provinces in one of the poorest countries in the world, and yet the tea is just stellar. And so we can invest in this community through fair trade, help build schools, help create access to water or healthcare, and we can do that all in a way that we don't have to charge an exorbitant price. We can, at a fair price. This bottle sells at Whole Foods for $2.69, which is competitive.
But I know. I got 6 of them on my desk.
Good, thank you. Yeah. But the impact is profound. And so we're going to really lean into that to tell that story. We're also going to work to convert as many of our tea supplies to this community, because it is such a great partner.
Yeah. And I think food, eating, we have to do it every day. We're doing it every day. We're making decisions. So talk a little bit about the thesis thing at the back of Eat the Change, and what you're kind of, we've been talking about just iced tea, but that came after you had already kind of committed to doing Eat the Change. So what's the macro thesis here? What are you trying to accomplish? What's the message?
Yeah, we really are an activist brand. I mean, our brand name is a call to action. It tries to help people understand that every time you eat, you make a choice. Most of the time it's not a conscious choice, but whatever you're choosing to eat has an environmental impact. And we want to encourage people to think about that when they eat food. And so can they move to plant-based options, which have a much lighter water and energy footprint? Can they move to water efficient options? As an example, our mushroom snacks, the mushrooms are grown, they only require 40 gallons of water to grow a pound of mushrooms. You can contrast it to a pound of almonds, which requires 1,900 gallons of water. Or, we have a carrot snack. It only requires 20 gallons of water. So these are different ways to think about what your dietary choices are and the impact they make. And so we want to help awaken that in consumers. And of course, everything we're offering is, we think, at the leading edge of environmental responsibility, and we want to be able to model that for consumers.
And picking up on your entrepreneurial background, right? You're co-founder of Plant Burger. You're on the board of Beyond Meat. Talk a little bit about how you spend your time on these other initiatives, and how you get them off the ground and get going.
Yeah. Well, as I think we've covered, I really think of myself as an activist, and so I want to do everything I can.
A hungry activist, apparently.
Yeah, exactly.
Constantly thinking about food. Yeah,
exactly. How do we help move everyone's diet towards more sustainable? And I think when we look at what's going on now, our impact on climate is so dramatic, and I certainly don't. I want to be able to look back, and I want my children to look back, our grandchildren to look back and say, well, at least we tried to do something about this. And so these are the areas where the highest impact is. Obviously, meat, animal-based foods are the most resource intensive, and also the highest creators of greenhouse gases. And so how do we move people away from animal-based foods into more plant-based options that can be, in some cases, more nutritious, but certainly as delicious?
Yeah. And I mean, some of the statistics, I'd love to hear from you, right? What is it? 57% of the agricultural system is based on 6 products or something crazy. Give us some of the high level stats. Because I think it's really compelling when you actually understand how, and I don't want to call it this food eco conglomerate that's kind of controlled food in America, but it's not far off, right? We've kind of been programmed as a country in certain silos of
so a lot of the pillars around Eat the Change are all around how to, what we think about, even if we're a nonprofit, what would be the key drivers? How do we steer people towards more planet-friendly food? And so one is everything that has to, as I said, plant-based as opposed to animal-based. Everything's organic. One of the other areas is around biodiversity, because biodiversity is important for the planet as well as for our gut biomes and our bodies to have more diverse inputs, more diverse ingredients. But the fact is that 57% of the American agricultural system relies on 6 crops, and it's rice, soy, corn, wheat, and potatoes, and sugarcane. And so as a result, you create these monocultures, which are bad for the ecosystem, but they're also bad for our bodies. And so at Eat the Change, we have a code that we won't include any of those ingredients in our recipes, whether it's tea or the carrots. And it makes it a little more constraining for Chef Spike, but as he said, it's like Top Chef. You just sort of get handed a basket and just what you cook with. And he's done created some amazing and delicious recipes with it.
Yeah, and look, Spike is an icon in the DC area. Talk a little bit about this partnership that you have with him.
And how we've had such a great time. It's
That's
so
what
fun because, it's funny, despite my resume, I am not a foodie. That's kind of the irony. Like I don't, I know my way around a kitchen, but like my specialty dish is peanut butter and jelly with bananas. That's sort of as high culture as it gets. So to be with Spike, who's looking at every aroma and scent, and he knows about ingredients I can't even pronounce.
yeah.
It's just so fun. And we had such a great time because this was, last week in Mozambique. It was his first time in a tea garden. And so I was sort of able to expose him to this. And as he said, he was even more inspired to build what we're doing and to see the impact on the ground with the community. And it's funny, we interacted with so many tea workers. And I think if it had just been me, it would have been more formal. But with Spike there, it felt more like a party and just a celebration. There were multiple times where I can't even explain it, but multiple times where we were with the tea growers and all of a sudden it turned into like a singing, dancing session. And then I'm like, how did that even happen? And it's just made it a lot of fun.
I mean, because this is a big aspect of this, right? Because you're making actual hickory smokehouse,
Yeah,
chef crafted plant-based
exactly.
kind of combination, right? Where it's
right. Well, that's the thing, the bias often is that when people hear plant-based, they think, oh, it's not going to taste as good. And so, when you've got to introduce this chef crafted element and the recipes they're delicious. We were just with a supplier yesterday. They were blown away by the carrot chews. They're like, wow, we've never tasted anything like this. And that's what's so neat because those carrot chews are a great example where we're using all known ingredients, but putting them together in a way that has not been known before. So you can really still be innovative. It's sometimes there's a role for science, but sometimes there's just a role for culinary art. And so that's been.
Well, being in this area, and I think you personally had a little bit of experience with politics early in your career, right? This is the DC. We like to talk a lot about on these conversations about just like the role of government, right? And I mean, what we eat, especially when we think about K through 12 and young people and the food and Congress thinking that pizza is a vegetable, right? Like, talk about the role of government here, right? Whether it's subsidies for certain agricultural products, whether it's regulatory side of this about what we actually feed children. What role does government play? What should it play? Should people be asking their lawmakers to be more active and food advocates and stuff like that? I mean, like, I think there's an angle here, right? But what are your thoughts?
I'm actually, despite I would say I did work in the past for Democratic presidential candidates and worked in the Senate for a Democratic senator. But I am actually pretty free market in the way I think about government and food. I don't think the government should be telling people what to eat. I don't, and it goes the same way. I don't think the government should be subsidizing certain crops that, they do. And you look at, especially our if anything, the animal-based meat we eat in this country is too cheap because it is, some of these crops get subsidized. I do think there's a role when the government can create, a seal like the organic seal. I think that's a positive aspirational certification. It's not something that's required or mandated. I do think there's great opportunities. You look at New York City, you see what Eric Adams, the mayor there, is doing to encourage plant-based eating, but he's doing that more for health of his community, making sure that hospitals and schools and city office buildings have plant-based foods. That's a great thing to do. But I'm certainly not an advocate of any kind of mandates around food.
Yeah. But just access to it, right? Like expanding.
Oh yeah, it's great when we can see access to food, but I'm not looking for any of our foods to be subsidized. But
I'm not getting there.
Yeah, and I would prefer that the meat industry not be or the dairy industry not be subsidized either.
Yeah, but as I'm getting at, as you continue to develop these products and show there's a market for it, it'll hopefully foster more companies to create more products that'll then create more of an ecosystem that then gives more choice to parents and government to play a role. So interesting. Yeah. So in terms of folks listening, people making day-to-day decisions, what kind of advice do you have for folks? I mean, as you kind of think through this, I mean, obviously their own individual choices. Is there a call to action? What would you like to say to people?
Well, I think the first thing is to be conscious of it, to start looking at the sourcing of your products and to where you can try to understand the environmental footprint. So we have some great resources at our website at eatthechange.com. We have an annual challenge in April, in Earth Month, where we encourage people to take a step every day towards more planet-friendly diets, and you'll see all those listed there.
Right.
I think what you don't want to do is be analysis paralysis. You don't, I mean, you can't think about everything all the time. So what I say is, well, can you have one plant-based meal per day? Can you have one, where a snack you might have sort of tried to make dairy or meat, can you move away from that for one meal per day? And then how do you move toward it? It's all, it's all a journey in my view. There's a continuum, and to the extent you can move along. One thing I love to see with people, when they have taco night, can they move over and try Beyond Meat one night instead of the cow-based meat? When you put it inside a taco, you really can't tell the difference. And
especially with the seasoning and everything. Yep.
Yeah. So that's a fun thing to do. Yeah, and so there are some, I think this phrase, we internalize that, eat the change, and that's sort of how it's both a call to action, but it's also a call to empowerment. And so if you do, I think most people, care about the environment. It's like, all right, let's just start thinking about what I eat a little differently.
How do you think about the equity of access to food, right? I mean, unfortunately, in this country, like Coke's going to be cheaper than, iced tea, and some meat products at Taco Bell will be cheaper than, eating healthier, right? Like, how do you think about that? Is that something you're worried about? I mean,
yeah, no, absolutely. And part of those things get solved with scale. I mean, that was one of the nice things about Honest Kids is that we launched it, and it's still carried. Honest Kids is still carried at McDonald's at the same price point as what the non-organic juice used to be. So these things can happen over time. One of the neat things about plant-based diets is they are not economically exclusive. They're actually in many cases less expensive. And so what you got to do is increase access to knowledge and to being able to purchase these things, and then recipes. And one thing we've been doing at Eat the Change is funding. We have an annual grants program. We've actually given away over $1 million over the past 3 years to help support nonprofits that are focused on expanding access to planet-friendly diets. And so some of it is around knowledge, some of it's actually around planting community gardens, and then some of it is actually helping set up making it easier for stores to reach these consumers.
Amazing. 5-year plan? Where are things going to be with Eat the Change, right? I mean,
look, if we had talked a year ago, I wouldn't have had any iced tea in the plan.
Exactly. You move fast.
Yeah, I will say we're a seasoned team with ambitious goals, and so this is what you saw Honest Tea do, we want to do, and then some. I mean, the downfall in some ways of Honest Tea was that it wasn't large enough. It didn't reach the scale that it could be irreversible. And so it got terminated. We have to make sure what we're doing is so powerful and so widespread and so well embraced that there's no turning back. And so that's what we're committed to doing. We've raised capital recently to make sure we can do that. We've got a team that I would put up against any team in the business. Knows what it's doing, great relationships. And so I would say keep looking for some exciting growth from us. Well, it was funny when we had our official event here in Bethesda to launch Just Iced Tea. We talked about how the world capital of organic bottled tea used to be in Bethesda. It had a short hiatus where it got transferred down to Atlanta, but we're bringing it back here to Bethesda.
That's amazing. Seth Goldman, thanks for being here. Appreciate the insights. Congrats on Eat the Change and Just Iced Tea, and 25 years. It's amazing. Happy anniversary to you for that. Appreciate everyone tuning in. Our next Coffee with Ken is going to be on February 8th with Diane Hoskin, the co-CEO of Gensler Architects. You can tune into that and register for upcoming sessions on coffeewithken.com. And as always, you can follow us on YouTube, Spotify, and iHeartRadio. Thank you, Seth.
Take care.
Good to see you.